Have you ever gotten your annual physical, gotten some concerning results, and then nothing happens for an entire year? Or maybe your doctor says everything is okay, but how do you know if it really is? And throughout the year, how do you know if those dietary changes that you're making are actually making a difference? The US healthcare system is broken in so many ways. Insurance companies overrule doctors, patients are left disempowered, and that annual physical really only scratches the surface of what's actually going on inside your body. In this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I've done in past videos. I'm going to share my experience with a service that I signed up for recently called Function Health, and it sort of changed the way that I think about my health data. In case you're new to my channel, my name is Dan. By day, I am an engineer. I work at Squarespace. I work as a cloud billing, like cloud cost specialist. But on the side, I make YouTube videos like this, and I have a website and I have a newsletter, and I just create content around things that I find interesting. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe, leave a comment. Since this is just a hobby for me, it's a great way to indicate to me that you enjoy my content, and it encourages me to make more. This video is not a paid endorsement. I am a full price paying customer. I signed up on my own about 2.5 months ago. In the description below, you'll see a referral code, and if you use that code, you can skip the wait list. But full transparency, the Function Health waitlist is mostly one of those startup growth hack method things, and if you just fill out a survey, you can skip it on your own too. But if you enjoy this video, if you find it interesting or valuable, I would love if you would use my referral code. The choice is yours. I will say that if you are deciding to join Function Health, make sure that you are ready to actually make some lifestyle changes. Because as you'll hear by the end of this video, just signing up and getting your blood test is really just the first step. And you actually need to make some changes to actually get some benefit out of Function Health. In January, about 2.5 months ago, I signed up for a service that sort of feels like a revelation. So, Function Health, for $500 per year, you get access to over 100 blood tests that typically are just not attainable to the average person. The results come back in what the company calls a first of its kind health dashboard. And now that I have all of my results, as well as my clinician notes, I can definitely say that I feel more empowered about my health and my body than I ever have before. So let's be real. In today's healthcare system, everybody needs to be their own health advocates. This means collecting and tracking your own data, verifying its accuracy, getting second opinions when needed, and making sure your doctors actually talk to each other if you are seeing more than one doctor. Because here is the truth. Nobody is going to care about your health as much as you. In general, my approach to life as well as health can be boiled down to two principles. The first is find the minimum amount of effort that will give me the greatest results. And the second is to identify experts in their field and use their experience and knowledge to guide my decisions. I think this is why I'm drawn to people like Brian Johnson, the multimillionaire who spends millions per year trying to slow his speed of aging. He is not without his flaws, but I think that what he is doing is really valuable because he is doing all the tests and investing it and making all of that data available for free for everyone. I think the foundation for all of this, everything that we do, is both data and transparency. I've gotten annual physicals since my mid-20s. In 2023, my lipid profile test showed a few elevated cholesterol levels. Not outrageously high, but definitely out of range. My doctor reviewed the results and said that he wasn't worried. And so what did I do? I made some changes, and then throughout the year, I kind of slipped and felt less motivated and just kind of sort of worked on it, but sort of didn't. A year is a long time to stay motivated when you have zero feedback about your progress. I can't feel my cholesterol levels changing. And so the urgency of those initial tests that you get quickly fades, and then you're back to old habits. In 2024, a year later, my test came back with a lot of improvements, and I felt really accomplished, but also more in the dark than ever. What else was going on in my body that I didn't know about and that could be changed with very minimal behavioral changes. And this was the general mindset that I had when I discovered Function Health. So let's walk through exactly what the Function Health experience is, from sign up to blood draw to getting your results. And I'll share why I think it was worth it for me and how you might be able to judge if you think it might be worth it for you as well. So, what is Function Health offering that makes it worth the $500 price tag? In short, access to over 100 blood tests that you normally don't have access to unless you're already sick. As they put in their FAQ, they find it backwards to require the existence of a condition in order to test for a condition. This really resonates with me. Think about it. In traditional healthcare, when you have insurance companies involved, doctors usually need to have the existence of a condition in order to order full comprehensive testing. And they're also worried about creating a financial burden on patients if for some reason the tests don't get approved. And so what you end up with is bare minimum testing. Function Health flips this on its head by giving you access to a bunch of tests that are curated by their team to give you the best comprehensive look at what's happening in your body. Remember my second principle, to identify experts and let their knowledge guide my decisions? This is exactly what Function Health is doing. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what blood tests are good for me, but the fact that they have curated this list makes me feel comfortable knowing that this is a comprehensive look at what's happening in my body. Signing up for Function Health is a two-step process. First, you need to join, pay the fee, fill out an intake form. This part is super easy. They are very happy to take your money. And then second, you need to actually find a place to get your blood draw done. This was super easy for me. I'm in Brooklyn. There was a Quest Diagnostics literally walking distance from where I live. To start out, I want to give you the full timeline of what my experience was. So on January 11th, I signed up and I paid the $4.99 fee. On January 20th, I had my first blood draw. That was when it worked for my schedule. I could have done it earlier, but that was when it worked for me. On January 21st, the very next day, I had the initial results start appearing in my dashboard. On January 24th, I had the second blood draw of this very first initial testing. And then on February 17th, about a month after I first joined, my detailed clinician notes were available, which marks sort of the end of this initial phase. It's worth noting that this set of tests is just the first part of what a Function Health annual membership involves. There is a second round of testing that has, I think, around 60 tests that you'd usually do at the 6-month mark. And then if you want to retest any of your biomarkers throughout the year, you can do that at an additional fee. Okay, let's talk about the blood draw. I know for a lot of people, this will be the part that gives them the most anxiety. I'm not horrible with drawing and giving blood, but it's also not my favorite. So this was the most difficult part of the entire experience. Function Health does a lot of tests, so they need a lot of blood. A lot of blood is what I am saying. Function Health obviously does not say it's a lot of blood. So, compared to a blood donation is about 14 times more than what they take at each Function Health blood draw. That's what they say in their FAQ. I kind of looked into it myself, and that's sort of what I saw as well. Um, I would say that it's a bit more than what you give at your annual physical. I just recently had my annual physical, and at that, they took 2 vials of blood, which I believe was about 8 to 14 milliliters. At Function Health, they took 10 vials per visit across 2 visits, so a total of 20, but only 10 vials per visit. And then a blood donation, usually if you're giving blood, it's about 14 times more than Function Health. So you're giving about 500 milliliters. And with Function Health, that works out to about 35 milliliters each blood draw. So definitely significantly less than a blood donation, but a lot more than your annual physical. Also, I think Function Health is very kind in that they split their testing across 2 different days since they are taking so much blood. However, if you live in a state where there is an additional fee for getting your blood drawn, that means you're going to be paying that fee twice, which is what I had to do. Function Health is very helpful in terms of the specific instructions they give you for before you do your blood draw. 72 hours before, you're supposed to stop taking supplements. About 48 hours before, you're supposed to avoid seafood because they test for mercury. 8 hours before, you need to start fasting. So, no food, no coffee. You are allowed to have water. You're encouraged to have water that makes the blood draw a lot easier. And then the morning of the visit, drink at least 1 liter of water and skip your morning workout. You're not supposed to work out that morning. I followed these instructions carefully, although I did slip up more than I wanted to. I had a piece of fish 3 days before my first test, and which is outside the 48-hour window, but I still think it might have impacted things a little bit, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So one other important detail I want to get into, in addition to the $4.99 Function Health fee, depending on your state, which in New York I had to do this, there is an additional fee for the lab testing. For me, this worked out to about $200 per lab visit, meaning this first round of testing actually cost $900 if you include the $500 plus the 200 and the 200. You are specifically instructed not to provide insurance, even if you have insurance, because Function Health has negotiated rates with these testing centers. So you just pay the fee, you do not give them your insurance. I scheduled my appointment at Quest for the very morning, which made the fasting 8 hours before very easy because I was sleeping. And when I got there, the process was very smooth. The phlebotomist even mentioned that they now see maybe 5 people from Function Health at her location each week, which made me feel a little bit better about my decision to join. This that nice social proof other people are actually doing this. As for the blood draw itself, 10 vials sounds intimidating, but it really wasn't that bad. It took only a minute or two, and the phlebotomist spoke to me the entire time to keep me distracted, and it was over before I knew it. And it was the very next day, about 28 hours after my appointment, that the first tests started appearing in my portal. I was able to get a notification. I got an email, I checked my phone, and there they were. And then for the next week, up until I got my test, my second round of testing, and then for weeks afterwards, they continually kept showing up in my portal. But the real question is, what did these tests reveal, and is it actually worth it? The Function Health website and app gives a clean view of all of your test results right on the homepage. By the time they all rolled in, for me personally, I had 100 that were in range and 14 that were out of range. But as they were coming in, I could sort of track how many total I had by seeing the number that were in range and out of range slowly grow on each side. For every single test, you can see exactly where your results fall on the range of what is considered normal. Each biomarker has a detailed why it matters section as well that describes what this biomarker is and what it does, what factors might impact it, and the potential consequences of being out of range. Did I personally actually read all of that information? Definitely not. But I think that it's good that it was there and all in one place that you can check. Because if you take any of these individual biomarkers and try to search the internet, you're going to see a variety of information, maybe conflicting information. And so having this trusted source where you can reference everything right there in your hand is incredibly useful. At the bottom of the home screen, your results are grouped by category. You have biological age, heart health, heavy metals, and so on. Makes it super easy to see at a glance how you're doing in each category. My first out of range biomarkers were all related to male health. And of course, as I was reading the description of each of these, it turns out that the fish that I had 3 days before is specifically recommended as a food to avoid for these biomarkers. So I have a feeling that these impacted my results, and I'm excited for 6 months down the road when I can retest and see if I'm doing any better. Having mountains of raw data is one thing, but it's really being able to synthesize that data that is the true value. And that is where the clinician note comes in. And this is really what you are paying for when you sign up for Function Health. 28 days after my initial test, exactly 4 weeks, my clinician note was available in my portal. This is what you're actually paying for. More than the raw data, this is the action plan that tells you which of your biomarkers are actually meaningful, dangerous, deserve your attention, and which ones are less so. It tells you what you should be doing to address these results. By the time these notes arrive, you've had time to really explore your results, do the research yourself, kind of see what you think about what's happening. And so by the time these notes arrive, you're kind of primed for what they're going to say. For me, these notes alone were worth the cost of the membership. It's sort of what I always wanted to get from a doctor, these comprehensive tests and results and details and an action plan kind of tailored made specifically for me. The clinician notes are separated into three sections: a summary section, or like an overview of everything. Then each different category has its own section. And then there is an action items, or like a next steps section. This summary section felt totally personalized. My summary section was about 415 words, and there were only a few different kind of like stock phrases, which I felt were more related to accuracy than anything else. This summary section started out with specific items that required attention, and then it had some things that were looking good, followed by specific action steps that I should take. For each category, the notes provided context for how each biomarker kind of interplays with each other, as well as what sort of action or like steps you should take to remedy, anything that was out of range. However, whenever there were any suggestions or recommendations, there was always the reminder to consult with your doctor first before making any actual changes. Adjacent to the clinician notes is a section entitled Your Action Plan. This section is marked alpha, meaning that it is actively being developed or created. Function Health is careful here. They're making it very clear that they are not providing medical advice. Their fine print states that all of this is strictly for informational purposes and should not be a substitute for medical advice. Despite these disclaimers, your action plan provides specific foods and supplements that you should either enjoy or avoid based on your results. For me, the foods to enjoy were lots of different types of beans, and the foods to limit were mostly seed oils. I know that this is recommendations like on a per person basis, but I imagine they're probably going to be largely similar across multiple different people. But it does still feel more personal because it's based off of my data, even though the end result is probably going to be similar just across the board of eat more beans, eat fewer seed oils. I started incorporating some of these changes into my diet, and I'm excited to be able to see what the impact will be when I do my next round of testing. Okay, so after all of this, the big question remains, is Function Health actually worth $500 plus the lab fees that you need to pay? I'm going to share a few thoughts on the value proposition and who I think Function Health is actually for. So I'm 2.5 months into my Function Health journey, and what's actually changed so far? So I started off the year deciding that I wanted to focus more on my health, my diet, everything else, and Function Health was just a part of that. So I'm tracking calories in an app called Lose It. I'm weighing myself every day and tracking that in an app called Happy Scale. And then I have Function Health, which gives me the granular data and then retesting throughout the year. 2.5 months into the year, I am still on track with all of these things. I've lost a little over 10 pounds so far, and I'm feeling good. I feel like I'm going to continue to stay motivated. How much of this is actually a result of Function Health? That is harder to quantify, but I will say that I'm still actively thinking about my results. They occupy space in my brain, which does serve as a motivator for me. There are two main areas of my personal results that have really stuck with me. The first is heart health. And so I'm definitely doing some things to eat a more heart healthy diet. I've reduced my red meat intake to almost zero. And so I'm feeling good about getting some of those biomarkers in a better place. And the second is just some nutritional deficiencies. So I've started taking a few supplements that I never took before, including Brian Johnson's longevity mix, and I'm taking D and I'm taking Omega. And these are all a direct result of my Function Health results. And I think what is keeping me motivated is having the ability to have those follow up tests in 6 months, to be able to track my progress and to know that if I stick to these changes, I'll actually be able to see what that looks like. Could I have made these changes before Function Health or without paying the $500, $900? I could have, but I didn't, right? So it's hard to say whether Function Health is actually worth it because I'm doing well right now. I'm sticking to things right now, and I did Function Health. So there's a relationship there. But if you're somebody that's able to do this without something like Function Health, you could be just as successful. For some people, you just need that little extra push, that little bit of more extra information. So, not everybody is super excited about Function Health, and I do want to share this little story as well. Last week, I had my annual physical. I specifically waited a little bit longer so that I could have my Function Health results to bring in and share with my primary care doctor so that we could kind of make decisions and use that data to kind of inform discussions. But when I got in there and I asked him if he had heard of Function Health and started explaining to it, he cut me off. He wouldn't let me finish, and he was just like, don't waste your money. His perspective was that patients having access to all of this data was actually really bad because it causes people to fixate on things that don't actually matter. And there are a lot of things with these results that really don't matter, and people can drive themselves crazy. He told me about a wealthy friend of his who decided that he wanted to get a full body MRI, even though he was healthy and had no symptoms. And my doctor had warned him not to do it, but he was convinced he needed this, and so he was going to do it. And they found a cyst, I think, in his pancreas. And so there were no symptoms, there were no blood tests that showed anything bad, but because they found the cyst, they had to do a surgery. And there were complications with the surgery. And this friend was in the hospital for 5 days. And at the end of the day, the cyst was nothing. He did all of this risk. He had this really traumatic hospital stay, and it was for absolutely nothing. That cyst could have been there for a really long time doing nothing. My doctor's point was clear. When you test for everything, you're going to find something. And when you go to your annual physical, when I went to my annual physical, the things that he tests for are the things that are really important to identifying when there's something wrong. And really, that's all you need. And you don't need to drive yourself crazy going down rabbit holes trying to find these sorts of things that may or may not actually matter. I tried to explain to him that I was less interested in single things that were out of range and more interested in the time series. So, sort of seeing how things are changing over time. But his eyes were already glazed over. He wasn't listening anymore, and he wanted to get on with my physical. Interesting, though, the medical assistant who came in a little bit later to do my blood draw for my physical was more interested. She asked me how much blood they took, and when I told her it was 10 vials per visit, her eyes got wide, and she was saying that she couldn't imagine. She had patients that get nervous enough with the 2 vials. She can't imagine pulling out 10. I told her about my doctor's skepticism, and she was just like, he's old school. She seemed sort of interested in it. She might look it up later. I don't know. It's not up to me. But yeah, that's sort of an alternate perspective on the whole thing. So after all of this, is Function Health worth the $500 plus lab fees? I think all of my doctor's points are valid. You don't want to drive yourself crazy going down a rabbit hole. The body is complex. There's going to be a lot of different results. If you do this, you're going to see some biomarkers that are out of range. And if you're the type of person that will drive yourself crazy with that, maybe Function Health is not for you. Just as exploratory surgery on a healthy person isn't helpful, so too can overtesting be harmful. But at its core, collecting health data is really all about behavioral change. At the end of the day, all of this data is only going to be driving behavioral change if you want these biomarkers to improve or get better. If you are considering function health, you should ask yourself, will this data actually help you make positive changes? What's stopping you from making those changes without this service? Why don't you just make it right now? Are you somebody who might obsess unhealthily over this information? Are you mentally prepared to incorporate this data into your life? Let's be honest. Function health is just an expensive way to tell yourself to eat healthy and exercise more. That's all it is. Whatever your results are, if you want to improve it, that's how you do it. It's much more granular with the data that they give you, but at the end of the day, that's really all it is. Think of it sort of like an Apple Watch, right? For some people, closing the rings is a huge motivator to stay active. For other people, they're able to exercise without needing that gamification thing. It's up to the individual whether this sort of data will impact the behavioral change of being more active. For me, 3 months in, it's been worth it. The real question will be in a year from now, when it comes to renew, whether I decide I would like to do another year or not. If you think you're the type of person that would be motivated by this information and you have the disposable income, I say go for it. Try Function Health, sign up, give it a go. Just remember that this data is only as useful as your ability to make changes and actually incorporate this information into your life. Testing is just the first step towards actual change. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Function Health and if you've tried it in the comments. Let me know what your experience was and if it matched mine. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, give it a comment. I would love to hear from you down below. And as I said before, there's a referral code in the description. Feel free to use that if you decide to give Function Health a try. Thank you for watching, and here is to a healthier you. See you in the next video.